Meeting of the Starkville Board of Alderman will now come to order. Please rise for the singing of the Pledge of Allegiance, to be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You have before you a copy of the modified written agenda, and before I open the floor for proposed revisions, I've got one potential revision to make to it, and that is the addition of the request for approval to accept the 2011 AIP grant from the FAA in the amount of $69,065. And if there's no objection, I'd like to add that item to the agenda and add it as a consent item as presented. Is there any objection to that item being placed on the agenda and the consent agenda? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter as presented has been placed on the agenda as a consent item. Do we have any further proposed revisions?
I've got some.
All right. Alderman Dumas, you have the floor when you're ready.
Under Building Codes and Planning Department, if I could, I'll take all of them on consent. All of them have 9 consent items, or 9 conditions.
Let's do them one at a time.
Item 1 with the 9 conditions as requested by P&Z.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11B1, the approval of P&Z item number FP 11-09 with, as presented with the 11 conditions as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the consent agenda.
9.
Excuse me, as with the 9 conditions as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas.
Under Building Codes and Planning Department, item 3 with the 9 conditions is listed.
Alderman Dumas has proposed placing item 11B3, the consideration of the approval of P&Z item number PP 11-01 as presented with the 9. Was it 9?
9.
With the 9 conditions as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Under personnel. Under personnel, item 1 to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed placing item 11I1 on the consent agenda, the approval of the reclassification of William Bell from temporary status to the regular full-time employee status as a driver in the sanitation department as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
Yes.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, you have further proposed revisions.
Number 3, under personnel.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11I3, the approval of the hire of Cassandra S. Young as a deputy court clerk as presented onto the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
Yes.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, you have further proposed revisions?
Yes, under personnel, again, number 7, effective August 17th, 2011.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed placing item 11I7, the request to reclassify Stephanie Halbert in the city clerk's office to the position of deputy clerk as presented effective August 17th, 2011 on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, that's your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Under public services, item 2 to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed placing item 11K2, the request for approval of a budget-neutral reorganization of the water department that will add an additional service request response crew as presented onto the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, you have further proposed revisions.
I do. Under public services, item 2 to consent.
We just put item 2 on consent.
I'm sorry. Item 3 to consent.
All right, Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11K3, the request for approval to purchase an additional truck for the water department from state contract in the amount of $23,378 on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, you have further proposed revisions.
Item 4 to consent under public services.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 11K4, the request for approval to purchase an additional mini excavator for the water department from Williams Equipment and Supply, the submitter of the lowest quote in the amount of $20,090 as presented onto the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Any objections? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have any further proposed revisions?
I do. I have 2 more. Under board business, item F, consideration of making appointment to Ward 1 position of Board of Adjustment and Appeals, that being filled by Lee Carson, to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place item 10F, the appointment of Lee Carson to the Ward 1 position on the Board of Adjustment and Appeals for the term ending June 30th, 2015 on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear an objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda.
Finally, item 10 under board business to consent.
Alderman Dumas has proposed placing item 10G, the authorization of the City of Starkville and DHS Ventures entering into certain easements and deeds to facilitate construction to ensure the care and maintenance of utilities and clarify the borders of the property as presented onto the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Dumas, do you have further proposed revisions?
I have no further revisions.
All right, are there any other proposed revisions from the members of the board? Alderman Parker.
Item F1, Engineering and Streets, F1, authorization to amend the South Montgomery traffic study to include an increased scope required by MDOT.
Is that for consent?
Yes.
Alderman Parker has proposed placing item 11F1, the authorization to amend the South Montgomery Street Traffic Study Engineering Contract to include an increased scope required by MDOT as presented onto the consent agenda. Do I hear any objection?
Objection.
That matter's been objected to. It will remain on the regular agenda. Do we have any further proposed revisions to the agenda? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order. Do we hear a motion to approve the agenda as revised?
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter that you have before you is the consideration of the approval of the consent agenda as revised. Is there any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Any objection to the approval of the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised is approved. That will carry us to the consideration of the approval of the minutes from July 5th, 2011. I know the city attorney has a recommended change, and he has given it to me. Is there any member of the board that is interested in seeing this change?
They were copied by email.
So as to make the motion.
City Clerk, you seen it?
Just the highlights?
No, have
We need to see it before we.
You emailed it.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Mr. Turner, just tell us real quickly what it is.
Sure, sure. We're changing one word in item 21. That was the option to purchase property with respect to the municipal new police station. And we're changing the word responsibility to reimbursement in the heading and in both paragraphs of that item.
Clerk, you understand what we're doing?
Yes, go ahead.
Do I hear a motion from the floor?
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to approve of the minutes from the July 5th, 2011 meeting with the one change, which has been reduced to writing, that was recommended by the city attorney to the minutes. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Vaughn's motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the approval from the special call meeting on August 9th, 2011. Discussion.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of the minutes from August 9, 2011. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Dumas's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that will carry us to announcements and comments by the mayor and members of the board. I have a couple of comments tonight. First, the referendum on the proposed bond issue for the construction of a new police station has been set for September 27th, 2011. It means the voter registration period is now open to register to vote in that bond referendum. That process will remain open until August 27th. Since August 27th is a Saturday, the city clerk's office will remain open from 8 to 12 on Saturday for anyone wishing to register to vote on the last day before the deadline. Next, also on August 27th, we will we will be enjoying Travis Outlaw Day in our community, and I'd like to give my own personal advertisement for Travis Outlaw Day. I have had the pleasure not only of attending, but of being an official judge in the rib cooking competition for the last 2 years. And I've got to tell you, this is a splendid event. Encourage everybody in the community to come out. Not only we get the opportunity to rub shoulders with our own Travis Outlaw, but Travis Outlaw puts this event on, which is filled with plenty of food, fun, and entertainment, completely free of charge as a service to the community where he was raised. So on August 27th, from 10 to 3, I would encourage all of you to come out to McKee Park and enjoy what I'm sure will be another wonderful event. Now we'll move to comments by the members of the board. Do we have any comments from the members of the board? Alderman Dumas?
I do, I have one. I'm going to ask Joel Clements, our IT director, to come up and as Parker mentioned, we've got the referendum on September 27th for the Phase 1 of the master plan for our municipal services. There's been several questions as to what Phase 1 is, and we've talked about it at length in here. But we felt the best way to not only advocate for the project, but definitely educate for the city, our individuals within the city, was develop a website. And so I want to unveil now the City of Starkville Municipal Facilities Master Plan website. And there's several things in here, but one of the most important parts is the calculator that I'll get to in a minute. But the website URL is cityofstarkville.org/masterplan. You can go to the cityofstarkville.org website and be linked to this website. And as we've talked about several times in here, the issues and the verbiage that associate themselves with telling the story that of what and why we need this. We have details of the plan, as you can see as you scroll down, talking about what Phase 1 is. what Phase 2 is, and obviously Phase 1 is just the police complex that will be on the corner of Highway 182 and Jackson Street 389. We give thanks to those needed, and obviously we have galleries of images in here as well. And this will change through time as we get more detailed information from our architect. And then as time goes on, even throughout if the referendum is successful, as time goes on through the construction aspect of being able to document construction timelines and goals and photos of showing where we are in that process. But the real strength in this, I think, is something that I have to give credit to Alderman Sistrunk with, is the calculator, because several times most people have asked, what does this mean and what is it going to cost me? And so on the top right, you can see your cost for Phase 1, and this is for the September 27th bond issue, and Joel and Sandra have worked together extensively on this, of putting together a calculator where you can put your true property value. And this is not only for residential, but it's for commercial. It takes into account senior citizens and disabled individuals, those with homestead or without. And you can put a number in there, and then it calculates exactly what this means as an increase in your tax payment. And Joel, do you want to talk a little bit about that? And I guess, well, go ahead and do that, and then I'll.
Certainly, absolutely. I'm sure this tool will be what we hope will be highly utilized. We also have Google Analytics on this site, so we can see exactly how many folks hit this as we go forward. So we hope to see it get a lot of hits. But I anticipate a lot of folks will enjoy playing with the calculator. And like Alderman Dumas said, you can select your class. Residential with homestead, for instance, will probably be most popular. And then you put your true property value, not your market value, but your true assessed property value, and we'll just say $125,000. And then just hit the calculate button, and that'll show you a yearly increase of $43.63. And of course, that will change if you were residential and 65 years of age or older. You can calculate that, and it deducts $75,000. The first $75,000 is exempt in that case, and obviously following through with commercial would change the calculation a bit as well. But you can play with those numbers and see what ramifications the passage of the bond referendum would have. Also have the gallery, like Alderman Dumas mentioned. We will be putting more images out there. You can check out some of the renderings that Mr. Schaefer provided for us. And also a link down here under the plan section for the complete presentation as provided by Alderman Dumas and the Municipal Facility Committee on August 2nd. So you can check out that in its entirety as well.
I can't thank Joel enough for the work he's put into this. I think several months ago was when, well, I guess through our strategic planning activities, we decided that an IT department was needed. And this is one example of the benefits of having this department in place to be able to do it. And so we're very blessed to have Joel and especially be able to work through the processes such as this, because I see this as a very powerful tool as we move forward.
I'd just like to add, too, that it's great to be able to do this in-house. There was no cost to the city other than really no cost to the city. I don't know if we had to buy a website name or not. So there was no cost to the city. Our IT department handled it completely in-house. I think the calculator will be very useful to people. It is your true value, so dig out your property tax record and look for the true value on there. You'll see a true value and an assessed value, and there's a factor of 10 difference. So you want to be sure to use your true value when you plug your numbers in.
And I'm most often asked, what exactly is meant by Phase 1? And this calculator only calculates the impact of the police complex, which is the only thing on the table at this point as far as the referendum that we're about to go through. So, Joel, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you
very much. So.
And the link will be live as soon as the meeting is over tonight. The URL is actually active. You can go directly there, but the link will be placed on the City of Starkville website as soon as we're done this evening.
Okay, good.
Right.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Do we have any further comments by the members of the board? Any further comments by the members of the board? Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. At this point in time, any citizen wishing to make comments may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Greeting to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner Ward. Alvin, like to recognize our Vice Mayor Sid Trump and Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. Turner.
Citizens, with the taxes and all, they gonna get pretty upset, pretty mean. Citizens wonder about the school board in that situation. Seems like that we cannot hear anything. All talk and no action. Citizens feel like that if we cannot get any response from the school board, that maybe we need to re-elect all of the school board members. Because they're waiting on action. Talk is easy, but they waiting on action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances. We have 2 public appearances scheduled tonight. The first is from Rhett Hobart and Dr. Bill Kibler with the presentation of the 2% funds allocated to the university in accordance with House Bill 1833. And y'all will have 10 minutes to make your presentation, after which time we'll hear questions and comments from the members of the board.
I don't believe it'll take us anywhere near that. I believe all of you should have received this brief spreadsheet. We thank you once again for this time, for the opportunity to visit with you, to continue to talk about the distribution of food and beverage sales tax, which has been extremely beneficial for the last several years, enabling our students to enjoy some benefits and organize some things and be supported financially in some items that prior to this simply was not possible. And so Rhett is here representing, I think, the 7th student body president in a row that's come in here and talked to you all about this. So you see the proposal before you. We allocated $282,000 last year, and you can see how that was spent. Mr. Bill Broyles is here with us, who always assists us in our office, working with the city administration to discern an appropriate proposal for what we project this 2% sales tax will generate next year. And so you can see it's a modest increase proposed based on the performance of this fund this last year. As you can see, we came within $10,000 of the allocation last year, and so that $10,000 is rolled into this amount. And then you can see the allocation for the 5 items that we have here. Same items as before. Music Maker Productions. Most of you all know that Music Maker Productions is the student committee on our campus that determines and sponsors large concerts that come to Mississippi State's campus in the Starkville community. Bulldog Bash, which you're all familiar with, which is a major event expected to be bigger than ever this year, which has a significant economic impact, we believe, on the city. The Night Route, which is the bus route that we use that brings students back and forth between our campus and primarily the downtown area. Homemade Music Festival, which is the spring concert that students put together, and of course the Lyceum Series, which is the performing arts series that this is part of the funding for that Mississippi State puts together, which benefits students, faculty, staff, and members of the community as well. There's been some driven by student assessment. Rhett has done a very nice job working with the Student Association and input from students across the campus, and I'll let him talk about that here in just a second, to propose some slight reallocations internally within those various categories that you can see on this sheet, bringing us to, once again, the proposed allocation of the $280,000 for the revenue and $10,000 surplus that we had from this last year. we believe all of these 5 items that are supported by this not only greatly benefit our students, which we've seen over time in the campus, but benefit the Starkville community as well, which I think was the original purpose of doing this, and we've been very pleased with that outcome. I'll let Rhett comment if he would like on some of the recommendations of the students to do some of the reallocating of the funds within these items.
I want to echo Dr. Kibler and my appreciation for what y'all do for the community and for the help with the 2% sales tax. We couldn't do these events without this tax, and we're grateful for the opportunity to have that and continue to have that for the future. This was allocated with the discussions amongst my executive council and the SA. We discussed the different options we had available, looked at the different things we wanted to allocate money to, and tried to be the best have the best resources available to us to make sure we best allocate the money for our students' use. The changes you see on here, we increased the funding for Bulldog Bash. Bulldog Bash is the largest free outdoor concert in the state. We want to make sure we maintain that title for the Starkville community. We are bringing in 2 major national acts this year, and we're excited to be able to do that, but in order for us to do that, we have to continue to increase our funding. So we looked at our sales tax revenue and tried to find the best way to do that. And looking at that also, we realized that our night route system was already being funded, not fully funded through the whole system as a whole. So we were spending around $125,000 on the system. We had some money coming in from the president's office as well, and I began looking at that system to see what we could do to fully fund it. I wanted to make sure that if we were putting money there, it was going to be fully funded for the year, and began looking at options for that. And in those conversations, we discovered some ways that we could really improve the route that would actually save us money. We were able to get a breakdown of the ridership for the system, basically the number of riders that ride the system per hour, from which stop they get on, how long they stay on the bus, and when they get back off the bus, and when they get back on the bus type thing. Through that, we're able to see that our overall ridership for the system on Friday and Saturday night was over 85% of the total ridership. We were only getting around 13 to 15% ridership on Thursday nights, but yet running the same amount of buses for all 3 nights. In doing that, I talked to our transit system on campus and discovered that we could decrease the number of shuttles that are running on Thursday night to still provide the same benefit to students, because the ridership on those nights is significantly less than Friday and Saturday. We were able to do that to still provide the same benefit for students, but to be to better spend our money and better allocate it for other purposes. So that's the reasoning behind that. We also were able to get some money from the president's office on campus to support this function. So we're able to add that in here to decrease the revenue we're putting towards that effort and increase the Bulldog Bash revenue.
Do we have any questions or comments from the members of the board for either Dr. Kibler or Mr. Hobart?
I have a couple. This one's a carryover from last year, Dr. Kibler. The Lyceum series in fiscal year 10 had been funded at $50,000, dropped to $35,000 in fiscal year 11, and there were additional funds that were available from other sources to keep them whole in terms of their funding. Is that the case again?
Total funding for Lyceum did not change. The allocation, the portion of the allocation coming from this fund changed, but the total allocation for Lyceum has actually been consistent now for 6 years.
Okay, so it will be at that same point. And does the night route include, for fiscal year 11, does it include the students' participation or the SA's participation in funding the game day shuttle?
It's a different allocation. That funding actually came out of our general operating budget from the university.
Okay, and I understand y'all are not intending to participate in that.
That's correct. And the reasoning behind that, and looking at our overall operating budget, when we're trying to run a system for 21,000 students with generally the same funding we had for 17,000 students, we have to look at ways that we can improve the resources, continue to provide the same resources and additional resources on campus. And looking at the student and looking at who rides the system, we realized that it really wasn't a big, very well used by students. So we want to make sure the money we're spending is best used for students as we can. As we thought it was the best option for us to let the athletic department pick that up on our behalf and continue the funding for that.
So you have some statistics that indicate how many students ride? Because what we've seen is that the ridership has gone from under 200 and 2 years ago to almost 4,000 this
Right.
past year. And
Well, in
you don't
general,
think
with
that any of those are students?
Well, with our parking situation on campus, our residents live on campus. They're able to walk to the stadium. We also have commuter lots on campus that are able to open up on the game days where students can drive on campus and park there. So we feel like the majority of our students are able to have resources on campus to use and don't primarily use the shuttle.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Demis.
So, night route, same function, just less on Thursday night, and you're able to do that with the current budget.
Right.
Well, I'm a big supporter of what y'all do, and so it's a great allocation of funds, and I'm pleased with Bulldog Bash, obviously, and B.B. King's gonna be here in a short while, and,
He's a Lyceum presentation.
yes, he is. Bulldog Bash is 11-11-11, correct?
11-11-11.
One of the best bands out there right now is coming. But no, I really appreciate what you're doing. Anybody who hadn't witnessed the uptick in town in the last couple of days should understand the impact students have on this place. And so we appreciate everything you do.
Thanks.
By tomorrow, we expect our enrollment will cross the 20,000 threshold, adding a few hundred every day. So tomorrow, we will probably cross 20,000 students.
First time ever
First time ever, not only here, but first time ever for any university in this state.
in the state.
We're very proud of it.
Keep them coming.
That's right.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Our next public presentation is from Jen Gregory. Also a 2% presentation on behalf of the Visitors and Convention Council. Ms. Gregory?
Thank you. Thanks for your time tonight. You guys should have in your packet our budget proposal for the 2011-2012 fiscal year. You'll see that this includes both revenues from the hotel tax and the 2% food and beverage tax. We've increased our projected revenues for both of these taxes modestly. We've seen, as everyone has seen, them increase year after year. So we have increased our projected revenues. And I'll just point out a couple of things that are new or have been switched around and try to explain those changes to you. A new addition to this budget is under our hotel tax expenses, and that is the line item for Main Street at $25,000. We became a certified Mississippi Main Street community in September of 2010. And the primary funding agent for the Main Street program is the Starkville Visitors and Convention Council. So Main Street is actually a subsidiary of the VCC. Other funding for Main Street, and really the only other funding for Main Street, comes from membership dues, which our memberships began in January of this calendar year. So that $25,000 will help make happen some recommendations from the recent charrette presentation that you guys, I'm sure, have seen. Things like Christmas lighting that we're going to join in a partnership with the Starkville Electric Department. Hopefully some increased lighting on some of the side streets like Lafayette Street, so that when we try to point out public parking areas in downtown, the path from public parking to our restaurants will be better lit. Other projects include further beautification efforts of the downtown, and just a variety of infrastructure improvements and promotional campaigns for the Main Street area. So that's a new addition to the budget. Additionally, under expenses for the food and beverage tax, we switched around some of our allocations for our sponsorships. You guys are probably familiar with our sponsorship grant program, where we allocate about $45,000 to $50,000 to our partner organizations like the Starkville Area Arts Council, the Oktibbeha County Heritage Museum, the Mississippi Horse Park, the Starkville Central Neighborhood Foundation, and other agencies that either produce events that we think leads to increased tourism in the area, or agencies that help to enhance the quality of life in the community. So we feel like it's part of our job to help fund those agencies. But this year, instead of just year after year allocating them a grant, a couple organizations we chose per our guidelines that we put out for the grants. We chose certain organizations as ones that we would like to make a commitment to financially for funding. And so you see that the dues line item is actually up about $22,000 to it's now at $28,000. And basically those dues include our grants. And for example, last year we gave a $10,000 grant to the Starkville Area Arts Council. Well, instead of listing that under our sponsored programs, we just changed that to the dues line item because we're now a dues paying member of that organization. Just to show our support for those organizations. And the organizations that are receiving membership dues from us are the Starkville Area Arts Council, the Oktibbeha County Heritage Museum, and the Starkville Central Neighborhood Foundation. Other organizations that we find are listed under the sponsored programs line item and the sustaining grant program. So basically the same amount of money that we've allocated in the last couple of years, but we just switched it around a little bit. And I guess the major change, and you might have read about this in the paper, is the large increase to the advertising line item. And basically, we feel like we are the agency in the community responsible for promoting the community of Starkville to the outside world. So we do advertising for events in town, not just events that we produce, but the Cottonishuk Arts Festival, Bulldog Bash, other events that we feel like bring tourists to the area. We promote those events on behalf of the community through print, radio, TV, direct mail pieces, and various other social media and various other media outlets. So we've really ramped up our advertising, but we feel like we're the agency that should be doing that should be promoting the community, and we've found success in that. And I just want to briefly tell you about a couple of successes that we've had. One is that an event that we produce, Pumpkin Palooza, will actually be, that you guys partner with us, you provide in-kind services to help make that event possible. That event will be featured in Mississippi Magazine as a feature article. It's a statewide publication, but it's actually the first time that Starkville's been featured in that statewide publication as a feature article. So these advertising, promotional campaigns that we've been doing have led to just, I guess, a larger awareness of what we're doing in the community and how the quality of life here is different. It's a different place than it was 5 years ago. And so, so feature articles and travel writers writing about the community is really how people find out about Starkville and come to visit. And eventually, we hope, will sleep in our hotels and eat in our restaurants and make us all have a little bit better bottom line. So that's a major change in the budget. And I think that's the main changes. Are there any questions I can answer for you guys?
Do we have any questions or comments for Ms. Gregory? Alderman Sistro?
I'm just going to go ahead and say thank you right now, in case you're not here when we get around to talking about Game Day Shuttle, which was a hot topic this board meeting. I appreciate your efforts to step up and find somebody to help subsidize that, since some of our other funding sources fell by the wayside.
Sure, absolutely. And that's another, that's where some of that Main Street money will go to, is to support efforts like that, like the Downtown Shuttle program.
Do we have any further questions or comments by the members of the board? Any further questions? Alderman Dumas.
I'll just say thank you. I've had the pleasure of serving as the chair of the CVB for the past year, and it's really, it's a pleasurable experience when you have an uptick in money the way we have in 2% monies, to be able to look at the things that you can do. And when you look at all the efforts that Jen talked about, when you look at the beautification efforts that was shown here in the packet that we saw, what, a month ago, 2 weeks ago, it's really encouraging to see the things that are possible when you have a good group of people sitting around. I'm not saying I'm included in that group, but it's encouraging to see that happen. So thank you for this, and I look forward to seeing what this does.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Gregory.
Thank you.
And that will conclude our public appearances tonight and carry us to our second public hearing on the adoption of the proposed budget for fiscal year 2012. Alderman Sistrock, would you like to introduce?
I would. We had our first public hearing last board meeting for the 2012 budget. We are not going to go through that presentation again tonight, but a couple of things that I'd like to point out is that there is no proposed tax increase in this fiscal year 12 budget. Contrary to what you might be hearing out in the community, we have not proposed a tax increase. We do have a lean budget, trying to be fiscally responsible, much like the presentations we've heard already tonight. We've tried to be fiscally responsible, and like everyone, we are having to do more with less. As the community grows, our revenues keep up to some extent, but never quite to the extent that we would like for them to. On the table and in your packet, you have summary budgets tonight that have the information that was in the printed budgets that were in the last packet. If there are specific questions, I'll be glad to answer them. The only changes from this to the previous printed budget are the incorporation of a couple of items that reflect board action. For instance, the approval to hire a couple of positions within the city to recognize the IT department as a separate department. A couple of clerical issues to make sure account numbers roll forward, and then to recognize some rollover items that we approved as part of our contingency expenditures that won't happen until, the expenses won't actually happen until fiscal year 12, and we want to be sure that we retain the identification of those funds because they are partly for Carver Drive ditch and partly for the South Montgomery traffic study, and we want to be sure that we retain the identity of those funds as we go into fiscal year 12.
Questions or comments from the other members of the board?
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Madam Vice Mayor, just a few questions for informational purposes. It is my understanding, am I correct, that your ending fund balance that you're proposing has $730,485, is that correct?
That's the number that came from the city clerk's office and from the budget committee, yes.
So that is correct, okay. Now, my next question is, am I also correct that there is only $200,000 as new money for street overlay and capital improvement projects?
That is what is currently budgeted for next year. As you know, Alderman Perkins, the budget is not a static document. It is a plan. We typically amend it frequently. I think this year we'll do 3, maybe 4 budget amendments before the end of the year. I think it's very likely that before we finish fiscal year 12, we will have identified some additional funds for use for capital projects.
So at the budget that we'll be voting on tonight,
The budget that we will be voting on tonight has $450,000, give or take a little bit, for capital projects. 200 of that is new money. 200 of that is new money.
okay, so to answer my question, I am correct then. Okay, my next question is there any specific line items for capital improvement drainage projects such as the Carver Drive ditch, excluding the $50,000 that's already been earmarked for Carver Drive for this fiscal year, plus the studies amount, which was $65.5? Is there any additional monies earmarked for the Carver Drive ditch in this budget?
There are no specific projects other than those rollover projects that you reference. There are no specific projects that are part of this budget. That would be part of the capital improvements plan that we will vote on once we get into fiscal year 12 and begin to determine how we're going to spend those dollars in fiscal year 12.
Vice Mayor, what is the budget chair's philosophy in terms of how we're going to have a substantial amount of money just to get APAC into town to do any reasonable amount of street overlay and to do any of these capital improvement projects such as the Carver Drive ditch that spans more than 2 decades?
I do not have an ongoing plan for funding Carver Drive ditch. That has been going on for two decades, apparently. This board, over the 2 years, has spent almost half of our drainage dollars on Carver Drive ditch, to the exclusion of other projects within the city. There are, I believe, about 12 houses that face Carver Drive ditch, and we've spent almost half of our budget on a project that benefits those 12 houses. There were 2 components of that Carver Drive ditch. One was a sewage issue, which Mr. Devlin assures us that to the extent that it can be fixed, has been fixed, that there will be problems as things are placed in the sewage system through manhole covers and that sort of thing. But to the extent that we can address those problems, we have. The other part of that project is the piping and covering of Carver Drive Ditch, which is the dollars that we talk about when we talk about funding Carver Drive Ditch. And that's an erosion control issue, a separate issue. And this board made a commitment to continue to try to fund that at a certain level each year. I know that you're anxious to move that project forward as quickly as possible. That will be a board action, and that's a separate item from approving a budget.
Vice Mayor, why is it the recommendation of the majority of this committee for matters that are not as delinquent as the Carver Drive Ditch to have greater priority over the Carver Drive Ditch? And I'm going to address one of the matters later on this evening, and I talked about it in a previous meeting, and no disrespect to the subject matters of them, but I want to mention two new matters that are given greater priority. One is $45,000 to $55,000, $45,000 to about $55,000+ for the engineering study for the South Montgomery widening, and we have a matter of $30,000 in the budget for the mayor's projects. So, what's the philosophy and the mindset to have special earmarks for those two particular projects, and we don't have any special earmark for this Carver Drive ditch? I mean, what's the mindset and what's the philosophy behind that recommendation?
If I may, South Montgomery, the traffic study that's being done for South Montgomery allows us to position ourselves to apply for dollars from MDOT, which would be used for widening South Montgomery and alleviating some of the traffic issues on South Montgomery, a very heavily traveled road and an area that has seen great development over the last few years here in the city of Starkville. Those dollars that you're talking about spending on the South Montgomery project are an investment in that we would be able to apply for. Do you have some concept for how many dollars, Mr. Kemp? 1.5 million. 1.5 million to possibly more than that. So it's a very small investment in order to be able to apply for funds to address a traffic problem that impacts a fairly significant part of our city's population. The mayor's project line has actually been reduced to $20,000 in this line, and what that mayor's project line is, it's a professional services line in the mayor's department, and it's intended to be used for a redevelopment authority, which will allow us to begin to address some of the economic development issues that have been brought to our attention through the years and have been really highlighted as we went through the Mississippi Main Street Charrette program, and as we've looked at ways that we can start to redevelop parts of town.
Vice Mayor, I appreciate the fact that the Budget Committee has scaled back $20,000 off of the appropriation to the horse park. Are we under any legal or contractual obligation to give them any sum of money?
To fund the horse park with
Correct.
any?
Yes, ma'am.
I think you probably are in a better position to answer that
Well, to your-
question than
well,
me.
your
To my
budget's-
knowledge, we are not, but I think you have a greater history with it. We may not be under a legal requirement to fund it, but sometimes when you don't have a legal requirement to do something, there's still an ethical requirement or reason to do it that is greater than that legal requirement.
Mr. Mayor, that's all my question to the Vice Mayor, but let me just finish my comments by saying that I noticed as the comments were given to justify the South Montgomery widening, its project to expand the scope of that street, but yet it seems that there's a lack of interest at this table to move forward with earmarking money for the Carver Drive ditch. Those residents are just as important as other residents in the city, and those residents want the foul smell and the bad odors to be eliminated from their area, and they want this city to take the necessary and proper action to enhance their quality of life. The residents of that area wants to see positive action from this board that will promote the health, safety, and welfare of that area. So we need to be very cognizant of that matter. The city has not, to my knowledge, completed and fulfilled all of its requirements and obligations from what I understand with respect to the sewer issue over there. We have been under an order from the Department of Environmental Quality for some time, and we need to make sure that that long-standing and delinquent matter is taken care of. Additionally, no, we are not under a legal or contractual obligation for the horse park. We have made a commitment many years ago just for a 3 or 4 year time period. And it's about time for this horse park to have a standalone. We can hear arguments pro and con for this all day. I know they're for economic development, but we have a lot of matters that we need to take care of within our city. We appreciate the horse park for its contributions. Ms. Brickley Miller has done a very exemplary job over the years in operating and managing and overseeing that operation. But we have a lot of matters that we need to take care of. I am not going to vote for this budget tonight because, one, it does not identify the funding for some quality of life issues. This budget includes funding for expanded size of government, which I am strongly opposed to. We have, with a majority vote over the last year or so, created new positions that I felt and still feel that we do not need. We need to start doing more with the staff that we do have. We need to maximize the efficiency and productivity in an 8-hour day. We need to continue to diminish the amount that we give out to outside. I want to commend the budget chair for at least scaling back to that. And the only obligations that we do have contractually is what we've been doing is the Humane Society, which we've been, I think in the budget, $106,000, the library, $170,400, the ambulance service is $40,000. So those are the only three that we really are under some type of responsibility to ensure that we do each year. So we need to fund things like street overlay. It's hard to get APAC in here for $200,000 or less. And that's not to say the $200,000 is going to be used for street overlay. Again, I'm going to mention this last, and it will be final. I appreciate our trying to keep as much money in the bank. It is going to be hard to defray the cost of our quality of life issues with a $730,485,000 ending fund balance. We have discussed this matter. I know it's the mindset of the majority at this table that the higher the end funding balance is, the better it is for the bond rating. Nevertheless, this board in prior years have operated with a much less ending fund balance, because if we keep this ending fund balance at this rate with the level of spending that's going on in this city, then we're not going to have the sum of money that's going to be necessary and proper for quality of life issues that include but are not limited to the overlay of streets, road construction, and these capital improvement projects. Again, with this Carver Drive ditch, I have suggested earlier that we could use existing staff. That's what we did back in the 90s. That's what we did with the ditch at the West Side Drive Park that is now referred to as the J.L. King Park. There are staff members that I like to brag upon, Mr. Devlin, that are in your department. They may be in the street department now, but they're in public works at the time. We have Mr. Bill Stevenson. We have Mr. Jimmy Ellis. We have Mr. Arthur Johnson. Those guys were the catalysts under the administration and leadership of Mr. Bill Webb, who covered that ditch extensively, and there's no need for us to have to go outside and hire people to do that ditch. Those guys know what to do. Those guys Mr. Stevenson can run that excavator. I watched them on that project every single day. I went down there before I went to my office every day and watched them do that. That saves money. That's what we need to start doing. We need to start utilizing our staff in-house. It's a matter of prioritizing these things. So we need to go ahead and make the commitment on the Carver Drive ditch if we are sincere about that. We have less than 2 years in this term, and hopefully we will do this. And lastly, I want to say, and I'm going to say one more thing about the Carver Drive ditch, gentleman from 3, and I want to get an early start on this by saying that, I mentioned some months ago that, I support the matter on South Montgomery, and I want to make that clear this discussion. I'm not against the South Montgomery widening. I told the gentleman from 3 in the board that back then. I think that that's a matter that needs to be addressed, but the point I want to make is I need the same support for matters in my ward, such as the Carver Drive ditch. So I'm just respectfully, in a very respectful manner, asking the board to let's find the money. We need to find the money so we can earmark that and go ahead and get that ditch done and get it over with. And hopefully we'll be getting some more data and some more information. We'll be getting a status report on where we are with the state and our federal involvement. I'm interested in getting more information on that to see what brought them into town. And we will be staying tuned to get more information on that on a later date. You'll hear back from me on that. So, but with all that being said, Vice Mayor, I want to appreciate what y'all have done, but those are some of the shortcomings I feel exist, and those are the reasons I must respectfully vote against it. Mr. Mayor, I yield the floor.
Do we have any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments?
I got one question. Vice Mayor, you say the money that we had and you spent it all on Carver Drive. How much did you spend on Carver Drive this last year?
Over the last 2 years, Mr. Vaughn, we have dedicated $90,000 to Carver Drive ditch. I think that's more than we've spent on any other one drainage project throughout town. And it is almost half of our drainage budget over the last 2 years.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Do we have any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll move to the public comment portion of the public hearing. And we will tonight hear comments for and against the budget, since I think the public has had, with 2 public hearings, enough discussion on this matter to form some opinion as to how you feel about it. So in keeping with standard public hearing practice, we'll begin with hearing anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed budget, alternating between those wishing to speak in favor and against, for a maximum of 3 minutes for each person and 15 minutes total for each side. We will continue to alternate with those for and against until either each side has exhausted its 15 minutes or no one else wishes to speak on the matter. Is there anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed budget? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed budget? Seeing no one, is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed budget?
Greetings to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin, Ward 7. Taxpayers are very upset that we pay taxes, but what do we get for our taxes? And people are being upset with me and Roy and Henry Ladner. Why are we left out? We pay taxes, but we don't see nothing get done. And then again, the people, when we pay our taxes, do we pay it to the old courthouse or the new courthouse? People are getting confused with the address. Really, they're getting fed up with we're paying taxes and we're getting nothing done. And we have a lot of scary people on the bike lane. If anyone is running from the police, they're not going to worry about that person on the bike lane. They might get run over, they might get killed. So we need to concentrate on safety and the betterment for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed budget? Anyone now wishing to speak in favor of the proposed budget? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed budget? Anyone now wishing to speak against the proposed budget? Anyone now wishing to speak against? Is there anyone wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed budget? Anyone wishing to speak on the budget? Is there anyone remaining who would like to speak on the budget? Seeing no one, we will move back into concluding comments from the members of the board, and that will conclude our public hearing. Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Alderman Dumas.
Sandra, I just want to thank you for the work you've done.
The committee.
The committee. I think there's great testament to the fact that we inherited an ending fund of $180,000, and just in a few short years, we've been able to do the things we've been able to do and still come on and move towards what our bonding agent's saying, that $750,000 or whatever the final budget is. So I really appreciate the fact that we're able to do that and still operate under the situations we find ourselves in, because yes, we pay taxes, but they're some of the lowest tax rates in the state. And we're doing this on a city of 24,000, and we've got 20,000 students. And I commend you for that.
The committee worked hard. The department heads really are the ones who deserve thanks for keeping budgets flat from year to year. We ask a lot of our department heads, and we don't always give them the resources that we really should for them to be able to do the things that we hope to have done. I'd also like to just finalize my comments by saying, do remember, it's a plan. A budget is a plan. It's not a static document, and it will change over the course of the year as we work our way through a year.
And I'd like to take the opportunity to offer some praise myself to Alderman Sistrunk and our staff. Budget is one of the most difficult documents that's prepared by the city each year. And Alderman Sistrunk, we benefit greatly from having somebody not only with your expertise. Some of you may know Alderman Sistrunk is a certified public accountant.
Was. Not anymore.
She has worked with budgets and financials all of her adult life. And she brings that experience as part of her public service to the city, spends long hours for 6 months out of the year crafting this document. And at the end of the day, difficult decisions have to be made, and sometimes it's not possible for everybody to agree on those decisions. But it should be noted that Alderman Sistrunk not only does her very best to prepare the document, but she does her very best to harmonize the different opinions about where the city's scarce resources should be spent. And it's a credit to the city that she does so.
Thank you.
Alderman Parker.
Some final couple of comments. And one, I would agree with Alderman Perkins that, the ending fund balance, while the amount that we have at $775,000 is a desirable amount. I mean, I would agree later in the year, I think we are going to have to take a serious look at increasing that capital outlay, the capital projects. I think the time to do that is whenever Edward comes up, when our city engineer comes up with our projects. And we need to take a serious look at all the projects that he has. I mean, I have voted in favor of every time we have had a vote to cover any section of Carver Drive ditch, I voted in favor of that each time. So I'm supportive of covering that. But I would say the South Montgomery project, while the Carver Drive covers however many people that it covers, I mean, we're talking about 5,000 people that are affected on South Montgomery on a daily basis. So I have, and of course that's my ward, so I have a lot of enthusiasm for the South Montgomery project, but it is a worthwhile project that affects a lot of people in town. And we're going to have to make some other hard decisions on some other line items as the budget progresses throughout the year. as outside contributions being one. We're gonna have to have a subcommittee, a separate subcommittee to decide how we have drastically reduced the outside contributions line item. So we're gonna have to have a group come up with how we reallocate that money as the budget progresses. That's it.
Any further concluding comments from the members of the board? Any further concluding comments? Any further concluding comments? Seeing none, that will conclude this, our second public hearing on the budget for fiscal year 2012. The next order of business is the consideration of the approval of the proposed 2012 budget for Mississippi State University's 2% fund.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval, please.
Alderman Perkins has made a motion to approve of the proposed 2012 year budget for the expenditure of 2% funds as presented by the Mississippi State University Student Association President Rhett Hobart in accordance with the enabling legislation of House Bill 1833 and the board resolution dated March 16, 2004 as presented. Alderman Perkins, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Perkins, do you wish to speak on the matter?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll now move into a vote on Alderman Perkins' motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the approval of the VCC 2% budget.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of the proposed Visitors and Convention Council budget as presented by Jennifer Gregory for fiscal year 2012 for the 2% funds in accordance with enabling legislation of House Bill 1833 and the board resolution dated March 16, 2004 as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Dumas' motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the adoption for the budget for fiscal year 2012 for the city of Starkville. Discussion.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Sistrunk to approve of the adoption of the budget for fiscal year 2012 for the city of Starkville as presented. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll now move into a vote on Alderman Sistrunk's motion. Please respond by saying yea, nay, or abstain as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Sistrunk,
Yay.
Alderman Parker,
Yay.
Alderman Dumas,
Yay.
Alderman Perkins,
Nay.
Alderman Vaughn,
Nay.
By a vote of 3 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the discussion and consideration of the Yellow Dot program and designation of a committee to establish said program. Alderman Sistrunk?
Yes, the Yellow Dot program is an interesting program that developed in the northeastern part of the United States in the early 2000s. It's a grassroots type program that has spread throughout the country. I think it's now in some 30-plus states, and it is very simply a program that's meant to provide an additional source of information in case of accidents. There is a yellow dot that is placed in the back windshield of a car, and that notifies first responders in the event of an accident that there's additional information about the driver of the car in the glove compartment of the car. It is an opt-in program, so nobody has to participate, but it is open if people wish to participate in it. Typically, it would include a photo, the name, address, medical information such as allergies, current medications, that sort of thing. And it again is something that is a way to provide one extra bit of information to emergency responders during that first bit of time, which is so critical in healthcare after an accident. The proposal is to have a committee that will look at how we can implement this in the city of Starkville, and there are a handful of people that need to be involved: the police, the fire department, the Parks Commission as part of the retirement functions that they now have. Obviously, someone from city administration needs to be on there, but the funding would need to be determined. It should be a very inexpensive program to administer because there is minimal supplies that are needed for it. There's no additional staff. We would have to determine where you would go to sign up for it, work through the mechanics of the process, that sort of thing. But it is a rapidly growing program, and to my knowledge, there is not one in the state of Mississippi just yet. So we would be the first in Mississippi to have that. And I would like to move approval of the City of Starkville developing a Yellow Dot program and designating the membership of the Yellow Dot Committee to be myself, Chief Lindley, Chief Mann, Matthew Rye, and our Chief Administrative Officer, Lynn Spruill.
All right, the motion from Alderman Sistrunk is, and how did you word the beginning?
It's from the sheet.
Okay, Alderman Sistrunk has moved approval of the City of Starkville developing a Yellow Dot program and designating the membership of the Yellow Dot Committee to be Alderman Sistrunk, Chief Lindley, Chief Mann, Parks Director Matthew Rye, and Chief Administrative Officer Lynn Spruill. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Saying no. Alderman Vaughn.
I apologize, Mrs. Trump. I was intending to put that on consent agenda.
Oh, well, and I also would like to say, anybody who would like to be on the committee is certainly, if any of y'all have any interest in it, I'd love to have additional, either committee members or attendees to meetings.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion on Alderman Sistrunk's motion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
We put the FAA thing on consent.
It is,
correct?
yeah. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of approval of P&Z item number PP 10-06. Mr. Griffith?
I move approval, Mr. Mayor.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of P&Z item number PP 10-06 with how many conditions?
9.
As presented with the 9 conditions as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the matter?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 All right, I'm going to divide. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a measure of 4 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. And let the record reflect that Alderman Corey did enter the room before the vote.
I'm the one who got the 6th member.
The next matter on the agenda is a request for authorization to amend the South Montgomery Street traffic study engineering contract to include an increased scope as required by NDOT. Mr.
Mayor, I
Kent?
move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to amend the South Montgomery Street traffic study engineering contract to include an increased scope as required by MDOT as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Dumas, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any
Mr. Mayor.
discussion? Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, I'm in support of this, as I previously said tonight in the past, and I'm going to respectfully request for my colleagues to give their continued support on the Carver Drive project, and I'm in support of this matter tonight.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Dumas's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the approval to transfer Gary Scott Rivers to the vacant position of warehouse manager in the electric department. Mr. Boyd?
Good evening, Mayor and Board. The Board has previously approved the advertising for the position of warehouse manager, and at that time, they approved the job description and classification for the warehouse manager. We have advertised for that position, considered candidates, and come forward tonight with a recommendation to transfer Scott Rivers from the position of lineman service crew in the electric department to the warehouse manager position.
Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Boyd, what I want to ask you is now, just a few questions, very respectful here. You recommending a lateral transfer?
Yes, sir.
Now, this gentleman here, Mr. Rivers, is in a grade 10 right now. Is that correct? His current position, is that a grade 10 that he is in right this moment? Can you answer that question?
It was my understanding that he was a lineman assigned to the service crew.
My question is he in a grade 10? It's the only thing I'm asking you right now. He's at a grade 10.
Alderman Perkins, I thought it was a grade 12.
So we need to be for sure when you're coming for us, because we need to know the exact answers. Now, the reason that's important, and no disrespect, Mr. Personnel Officer, we need to have these answers when y'all coming for us, because we want the answers. That's why we have y'all in the city. The reason that it's important, because if he is in a grade 10, this warehouse manager, as approved by a majority of the board on about July, the middle of July, is a grade 12. Now, with the salary that Mr. Rivers is making, well, first of all, let me say, it is my opinion that a lateral transfer is when you transfer from a position in one department to a similar or a like position in another department with no increase in pay. For example, if I am an employee for chief man, and I'm in a grade 10, and I transfer to Mr. Terry Kemp's department to a grade 10, there'll be a lateral transfer. Now, because see, if this is a grade 10 and he's going to a grade 12, it is my opinion, in my opinion only, that there is not a lateral transfer, because see, you don't see, because what is going to happen here if we approve this and the grades are different, that's the first problem. It's not a lateral transfer. Then the second problem is, then you will be allowing this employee, if a grade 10 is in fact true and correct, coming to this grade 12, making grade, that make grade 10 pay with his years of service, whereas the beginning salary of a step 1 in grade 10 is going to be $35,000 plus dollars, because the person in this warehouse manager position has retired. So it would be my opinion that if we're going to start at a grade 1, at a step 1 grade 12, that position would pay $35,948.33. So, I don't think it is a lateral transfer, and because the grades are different, because it poses a problem when you have a person coming from one grade to another, because what you're doing is you allowing him to transfer into this grade 12, and if he does that, he's matching more or less step 5A or 5B once he goes into that position. So that's not a lateral transfer. So since you don't know the answer, let me defer. Ms. Spruill, I take it you don't know it either. You're not a personnel officer, so all due respect to you. Mr. Boyd, could you find that out, and we can come back to this later in the meeting?
Yes.
And let me add one other thing about that, Mr. Mayor, while I'm at this. And even if a majority of the board decides to approve this, what we need to do in this city, and it's not your fault, Mr. Boyd, what I'm about to say, we, the city, needs to develop a very fair and equitable pay scale. Here we have tonight a recommendation to pay a warehouse manager $43,000 plus dollars. I remember when we hired our last city clerk, she didn't get 40, she had to fight to get 41. We just hired an assistant city planner for a city wide position, assistant city planner, whereas when we've been hiring other department heads or like positions, they've been getting around $50,000. But we hire an assistant city planner, for some reason, is only paid $39,000. We're gonna get a warehouse manager, who's gonna get $43,000. I'm not convinced that it's a lateral transfer. And no disrespect, Mr. Boyd, and I like the mayor say, the vice mayor brings a lot of experience to the board, and I appreciate him for saying that. As a certified public accountant, I bring a lot of experience to the board as an attorney. Because when I came to this board, I served as attorney for the Mississippi House of Representatives. I served for the Attorney General Office of the State of Mississippi, for the Mississippi Board of Nursing, Department of Corrections, and the list goes on. I've argued these cases for the Mississippi Supreme Court, so I bring a lot of experience to this board. I'm not trying to be boastful, but I thought I need to just share that. So it's nothing I'm trying to gain by asking you these questions. It's just my mindset. This is just my day-to-day job. That's why I'm here, to try to make a difference for the city. But I want you to make sure that you're right. I'm not trying to belittle you here, but let's just make sure we're right on that. And Mr. Mayor, I would like to pass on this, given we're going to take it up tonight, but I need for him to get me the right answer to see if this is a grade 12. Mr. Attorney, am I missed some of the end down there?
No, he asked me, did I know what the grade was, and I do not.
Well, the personnel, I have the floor here. I'll finish, y'all finish. Am I recognized?
You are.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just doing my job, Mr. Boyd. No disrespect. I just need to know the grade. I mean, you're the personnel officer. That's what we hire you to do. I mean, we don't hire the city attorney to make personnel decisions. I mean, he gives us the law, and Mr. Mayor, could we just pass this item till he get this for us? Or we can call a recess until he get either one, because I need to know that.
I think that's a reasonable request, but it's where we are on the agenda, so
okay.
Somebody needs to move, either to reorder the agenda, or I can move us into recess without objection.
I move we take a 5-minute recess.
May I make a comment, please?
I move that we take a 5-minute recess.
All right, motion has been made by Alderman Perkins that we move into 5-minute recess. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Perkins, you wish to speak on the matter?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Perkins' motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure passes. We'll stand in recess for 5 minutes. Meeting will now come back to order. And in conversation with Mr. Boyd, my understanding is that the information requested is in the employee's personnel file that is at the electric department. That being the case, my recommendation would be to table this matter and wait until you have full information before making a decision.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Sistrunk to table the consideration of the approval to transfer Gary Scott Rivers to the vacant position of warehouse manager in the electric department. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the approval to hire Benjamin P. Burkett for the service technician position in the electric department. Mr. Boyd.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to hire Benjamin P. Burkett for the service technician position in the electric department as presented. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Saying none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of approving an invoice payable to Tyler Technologies in the amount of $17,391.15.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of an invoice payable to Tyler Technologies in the amount of $17,391.15. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval for the personnel officer to advertise to fill the position of line foreman in the water department. Discussion.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas to approve of the personnel officer advertising the position of line foreman in the water department. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval for the personnel officer to advertise to fill the currently vacant position of maintenance worker in the water department. Motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to approve of the personnel officer advertising the current vacant position of maintenance worker in the water department. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Vaughn's motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that exhausts the open session portion of our agenda.
Mayor, I move that we adjourn until September 6th at 5:30 here in City Hall courtroom.
Alderman Dumas has made a motion to adjourn until September 6, 2011 at 530 101 Lampkin Street in the City Hall courtroom. Alderman Dumas, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second? Second. Motion has been seconded by everybody, but we'll call it Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Dumas, do you speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure passes. We stand adjourned.
May I go get a good meal now?
Yeah, it's my anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Number 3.
Happy anniversary to you.
Number 3, oh, bless it.
Come and get us well.
Hey, wait, you stop looking at the